You are now listening to part 6 of our 8-part series, Colds and Flus, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susan. Welcome back to Time Monk Radio. I'm really looking forward to hearing what the bees know.
Yes, indeed. And the bees know a lot and can certainly help us when it comes to dealing with what I often call winter miseries, colds and flus, and all the itises associated with them. The coughs, the runny nose, the stuffed up nose, all of those things as well. And then, of course, the sore upper lip or perhaps the cold sores. There's so many associated miseries that go along with the colds and flus. But as promised from last week, I do want to spend some more time on Echinacea before we get into the
All right.
green blessings here. Echinacea is an herb that I also talked about in the herbal medicine chest. It is one of my mainstay medicines. And I certainly encourage you to go back to that series on the herbal medicine chest and to listen to the section on Echinacea, because I go into quite a bit of detail about the difference between Echinacea purpurea and Echinacea augustifolia, and why it is that I primarily, as a matter of fact, only use augustifolia. I also talk about the difference between Echinacea root, Echinacea leaf, and Echinacea seed, and why it is that I only use Echinacea root. I also, especially when we're dealing with colds and flus, do want to reiterate the warning that you can very easily go into a store and buy something that you think says the Echinacea tincture. And when you turn it around and read it, and I hope you do that in the store and not when you're home, you may find that there are other herbs in it, such as golden seal. And that is one of the herbs that I do avoid when I'm dealing with a cold or trying to prevent colds. So it's quite important to be sure, if you're buying your Echinacea tincture, that it is just Echinacea, and best if it's just Echinacea root. To my mind, there are certainly some differences of opinion about that, which is why there's a great many different products on the market. I do believe that you can see me making Echinacea tincture from dried Echinacea augustifolia root on YouTube, and I also talk more about it there. I also use a very large dose of Echinacea. Last week, we were talking about a study that went on, I think, for about 3 months, in which people took a dropper full of Echinacea tincture on a daily basis, and overall had fewer colds and less flu than those who were taking the placebo. And that's a reasonable amount if what we're using the Echinacea for is a preventative. But if there is a bacterial infection, if your sinuses are infected, or your throat is infected, or your lungs are infected, or any other part of you is dealing with an infection, then we need to use vastly more Echinacea in order to get the antibacterial power that we need from it. Take your body weight, divide it by 2, and then divide that number by 25. And that will be the number of dropper fulls that will be a dose of Echinacea for you. So a 150-pound person divided by 2 is 75, divided by 25 is 3. 3 dropper fulls is a dose for that person when they are dealing with a fever, inflammation, bacterial infection accompanying a cold or the flu. And depending on the severity of that fever, the severity of that infection, we will take that dose as frequently as every hour. Again, the preventative dose was 1 dropper full taken once a day. The dose that we're taking when we're dealing with an active infection is much greater, up to whatever your dose is on an hourly basis. Now, it's rare that I would stay at an hourly basis for long, usually until the fever abated or until the pain was allayed, meaning that the inflammation has gone down, whatever I'm looking to see in reduced symptoms, and lengthen it that out to 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and so on, until we're taking 3 doses a day. But Echinacea is certainly one of the herbs that I think of first if I have that, you get that sensation sometimes. You just say, ooh, is there a flu? Is there a cold trying to colonize my body? That is certainly one of those thoughts that makes me say, I think I'll take some Echinacea tincture today. I do just about exclusively use Echinacea in tincture form rather than in the form of a tea or an infusion. It's got a very bold taste. It's not really bitter, but it is a bold and dramatic taste, and that most people do not like the taste of Echinacea in water base. The effective constituents in Echinacea are both, some are alcohol soluble and some are water soluble. So when we make our own tincture with 100 proof vodka, then we get the maximum amount of effective constituents from our Echinacea. Well, the bees love the Echinacea. The bees come to it. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons that Echinacea grows all over America, in gardens everywhere in America now, is that people love bees and butterflies, and it's planted for butterfly gardens, and it's planted for bee gardens. Hummingbirds generally don't come to the Echinacea, but the nectar of the Echinacea definitely attracts other pollinators. Echinacea purpurea is extremely easy to grow, either from a root cutting or from seeds. And grow some, whether you ever dig up the root and make anything from it or not. You will really enjoy having the beautiful purple coneflower in your garden. It's a hardy perennial. Once you get it going, it's pretty hard for it ever to go away. So enjoy the Echinacea. The bees know that pine trees and evergreen trees are antibacterial. The bees go and collect the saps from pine trees and evergreen trees and from poplar trees. And they take these saps back to the hive and they create propolis from these saps. They don't eat propolis. It's not like pollen or honey or royal jelly. Propolis is the bees' ways of washing their hands. The bees use propolis to glue things together and to protect their hive. A mouse may decide to come into a beehive because, after all, mice like honey. And mouse is very big, but bees working together will sting the mouse and can kill a mouse if enough bees sting it. However, this is a big disposal problem. What on earth are the bees going to do now? They can't drag the mouse out of the beehive by the tail. In cartoons, they do that, but in real life, they can't. The mouse is just too much bigger than the bees. So the bees embalm the mouse. like they did in Egypt. In other words, there aren't priests and there aren't chanting and there isn't incense and the organs are not taken out and preserved in special jars. But the bees do a very good job of embalming that mouth by spreading propolis all over it. And the mouth then desiccates, dries up within its coating of propolis rather than rotting and spreading contagion and bacteria to the bee hive. Propolis is a powerful antibacterial, and so are the saps and resins that it is made from. Among the many evergreen trees are myrrh and frankincense. And if you recall, these are precious gifts. Myrrh and gold and frankincense. Very precious gifts. Myrrh was one of the primary resins used in embalming in Egypt. Myrrh and frankincense are burned as incense, especially in Catholic churches. I have some myrrh and frankincense near my wood stove, and now and then I put a heat-proof dish on it and drop a little pearl of frankincense and a bit of myrrh into my dish and let them melt and waft through the house. It's been shown that doing that actually removes viral particles from the air. The anti-contagion abilities of the evergreen includes this interesting ability that when they are burned and their smoke moves into the room, that smoke actually can lay viral particles low. And this was not known in any way scientifically by those we may call the ancients, but they certainly knew what kept contagion away and what was best to use in not just holy places, but places where large groups of people come together. The church certainly is a holy place. The synagogue is a holy place. The temple is a holy place. And they are also places where large groups of people come together. And one of the things that we are learning in our time together is that colds and flus are more likely when we spend time in public places. Remember those two children who thought, oh, the reason we're getting so many colds and flus is because we go to public school, and they were probably quite right about that. So, propolis is available tinctured. It is an item of commerce. I've also seen elderberry syrup with propolis added to it. Oh, be still, my heart. There are several wonderful apiaries in the United States who make very marvelous specialty products. Very involved, especially in keeping us healthy during cold and flu season. You could make your own pine resin tincture. All of us know what pine resin or pine sap looks like. Just about everybody who's listening to this show has some kind of pine growing by them. The taste of some pine resins is very strong and powerful. The one that grows around me, white pine, is very mild-mannered. They are all equally effective. But some are going to, curl your nose hairs a little more than others. So you you can test after pines, with the exception of yew, which we don't want to use. Just about any evergreen that's out there right now could be tinctured up. I've made cedar tincture. I've made juniper tincture. I've made hemlock tincture to the tree hemlock, not to poison hemlock. I've made pinyon pine tincture. I've made lodgepole pine tincture. I've made white pine tincture. I've made slash pine tincture. And the tincture either from the needles of the plant or, as we're talking about, from the resinous sap from these evergreen trees. The sap itself is hydrophobic, afraid of water. So we can't use 100 proof vodka. Remember, I was just saying, if you make your own Echinacea tincture with 100 proof vodka, which is half alcohol and half water, then you get all of the alcohol-soluble constituents, and you get all the water-soluble constituents as well. But when we want to make a tincture from pine resin, from the resin itself, we can't use 100 proof vodka. Now, if we're using the needles tincture up just fine, because there's already some water in those needles. But the resin itself, however, won't tincture into 100 proof or 80 proof. We need to get Everclear, what's sometimes called grain alcohol, 198 proof, in order to make tinctures from these saps or resins. You can buy myrrh tincture on the market. You can buy propolis tincture. Other pine tinctures you would need to make yourself, and very, very easily done. All of my books contain instructions for making tinctures. I often suggest that you start out with a little jar of something and see whether or not it's something that works for you, is useful to you, and that you think about when you have that problem. And if so, you can make more of it. I keep a jar of honey nearby. Almost all of my life, I have been a public speaker. And that means that I use my voice a lot. I've just been taking a trip down memory lane reading some letters that I wrote to my mom in 1963. I was first away from home, 17 years old, and at UCLA. And I write that I have laryngitis so badly that the doctors are scratching their heads and don't know what to do, that I can't even talk in a whisper. My vocal cords are so swollen. Well, they didn't know what to do, and it took me a while to figure out what to do. But eventually I learned that honey was going to be one of the absolute best allies for my throat on the planet. I have a wonderful honey story, a wonderful honey memory. I was in Jamaica, and someone asked me if I wanted to go and visit the herb, the herb. And I said, yes, indeed, I definitely want to go and visit her. And off we went, following a road, which soon became a dirt road, which soon became a track, which soon became just kind of bouncing over a meadow, and at last we stopped. And we stopped because the car literally couldn't go any further because there was a little stream, and it had cut a little gorge, little, like, maybe, 3 feet. But certainly something the car wasn't going to get over, and someone had kindly laid a board from bank to bank, and we walked across the board and continued on our way on foot. And it wasn't long thereafter that we came to yet another stream. This one had cut much more deeply into the earth, maybe 6 to 8 feet, and someone once again had laid a board from bank to bank, and we walked across. I was definitely a little bait in my breath, a little catch there. And it was not long when we came to, yes, indeed, the third stream, and there should have been the billy goat growth, but instead there was quite a deep chasm. To my terrified eyes, it looked as though it went down and down and down forever, ever, and ever, and there again was a board stretching from bank to bank. Not enough for me. I had to have someone hold my hand and go in front of me as I walked across. There was not much of a bank on the other side, and a cliff that we had to scale. And as we scaled this cliff, not a large cliff, maybe 8 to 10 feet, and as I'm pulling myself up to the top of the cliff, and my eyes are just coming up over the top of the cliff, again, like in a cartoon, right? Here comes the eyes, woo, over the top of the cliff. What I see is an enormous pile of rum bottles. Well, okay, I am in Jamaica. There is a lot of rum in Jamaica. But I'm not so sure. Or that maybe I shouldn't go back down and go across all the bridges, because what is going on up here with all these rum bottles? But there are people behind me, so I have to keep going and come up over the edge of the cliff and spend an extraordinary day with this herb woman out in the bush and with a machete, digging and chopping and bringing in things, and the difference between men tonic and the women tonic, and just a fabulous, fabulous day for her. And what I discovered, among many things that she told me that day, was that she kept bees. And she used the rum bottles as the containers for the honey that her bees produced. Now, of course, she was a single woman living alone in the bush in Jamaica, and that's not really safe. And so what she did was that she spread rumors about her powers, and that if any man dared to come up on the level where she lived, that very, very bad things would happen to their you-know-what. And she actually did have to scare, at first, a couple of interlopers away. She said that the word did get out, and people became, if not respectful, at least terrified. And so the men who drank all that rum wouldn't come up on the level where she lived. They were that frightened of her. They would walk across the 3 plank bridges, climb the cliff, and then just roll the rum bottles into a pile for her and go back so that she would not curse their you-know-what. It was probably 25 years ago when I met this herb woman in Jamaica and procured a bottle of her honey, the best honey I had ever tasted in my life. To my taste buds and to my body, this honey leaves Manuka honey in the dust. It is darker, it is richer, it is woo. And that jar of honey has remained tucked into a corner of my pharmacy where no one sees it except me. And when I have a need, when my throat says, heed, it is a swallow of that particular honey that I find the absolute best thing. All right. I know that's unfair. You're not going to go to Jamaica and look this woman up and find her honey. So that's why I mentioned Manuka honey. Manuka honey, the treasure of New Zealand, is now fairly widely available. I remember discovering Manuka honey when I went to New Zealand, and its incredible antibacterial properties and its ability to counter colds and flus, to heal sore throats, and just to generally make you feel a whole lot better. M-A-N-U-K-A, Manuka. Manuka honey. As a matter of fact, at a large convention that I taught at fairly recently, there was a trade show, and there was a product called Medi Honey, and it was Manuka honey put into sterilized bandages so that it could be used in hospital settings to heal ulcers and slow to heal wounds. Manuka honey is part of what the bees know. The bees know that green blessings are everywhere around us, and that they're in the simple things of nature, that we don't have to make it complicated. We don't have to use fancy hand sanitizers, a drop of yarrow tincture, or just washing our hands with water will do. We don't have to get a flu shot. We have things that we can bring into our lives, like honey, like elder, like yarrow, like garlic, like echinacea, like evergreens, that can help us stay healthy through the entire winter. So at this point, we've mostly been focusing on staying healthy, although we're moving a little bit into dealing with some infections, especially with the echinacea and the yarrow. And next week, we are really going to do our primary focus on the infections that come along with colds and coughs, with colds and flus, such as cough, chest congestion, and as I call them, the itises. And then we'll have one last week to look at what not to do and to wrap it up. I'm really enjoying my time with you, focusing on colds and flus the wise way. And I do hope that you will come and visit me at SusanWeed.com and come and visit my bookshop, The Wise Woman Bookshop.com. You'll find all of my books at thewisewomanbookshop.com. You'll also find information about the correspondence courses and my classes and workshops. I'm going to be traveling a bit in 2014, so come and check it out and see where I'll be. Maybe I'll be somewhere fairly near to you. Green blessing.
Thank you, Susan. You've just listened to part 6 of our 8-part series, Colds and Flus, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio.